Welcome to lesson 9, working with queries. As expected, there are many times that we're going to actually want to query the database directly. How is that done with the SDK? Well, since the SDK and the whole data model is translated within Java into objects, there is a way to directly access the objects without using standard SQL, and that's using Hibernate. Hibernate is complicated, and I'm not going to go into all the details. However, I would like to show you an example, just working with an example to see how we would query using Hibernate and how do we use the object model as opposed to the SQL table model that we perhaps are more familiar with, some of us anyway. This is an example here, querying with Hibernate, that we will see when we look at our examples. And this is an example where I'm querying the to-do entry table. You will see from the, we're creating a string, and we don't have a select statement. We start with from the from, which is the way the SDK works with Hibernate, although Hibernate itself pure does have a select, but we do not within the SDK, starts from the from. The to-do entry is the object representing the table, the to-do entry table. And you can see that we are actually doing a join to the drill keyed value table. We don't need to know the details of what this query exactly is doing, but we see that we have we have where statements, and we see we have interspersed like dk.id.dToDo and so on. The way we actually complete the picture of the filters is down later on at the bottom, where we show the bind. We bind lookups and IDs and integers. And we're binding the value that we put in with the colon value to an actual value that we have in the code above. So they have a slight, as you see, there's a different syntax, and if you're binding a lookup, you have to find the right lookup. An ID, you have to get an ID, an integer, obviously an integer, and so on. And a string has even a third parameter, as you see. And if you want to get the select, to get the column, well, that is you see the add result at the bottom, which is getting the to-do ID. Now, the actual syntax, how you actually work out how do you translate an SQL statement into a statement like this. Again, a lot to do with you can copy existing code, but the most important thing is to look at there's a file which is responsible for defining the way we're meant to query these entities. And if you look at if I create, I'm going to look at my particular generated folder that we have, and you will see that we have something called an HBM file. And if we look at the HBM file, you will see that we have way of defining, we have ID, and you see, for example, over here we have an ID, ID name, and so on. And it's by actually going through and looking at this XML file, you can actually define the path that you need and the way you actually need to call each particular field value entity by using this, looking at this XML file. So that is the file that one needs to look at in order to create the syntax for Hibernate in this way. Now, even though Hibernate, the reasons to actually use Hibernate, Hibernate actually has the ability to cache the query results so we can get faster response times for queries. So there are benefits of using Hibernate. Nonetheless, you can also use what's called the pass-through queries, and something which is more familiar to you, you should see this a select statement here, is another way of doing it, querying and not using Hibernate. So the select statement shows the table names directly. Even though we do have the table names as opposed to the entity names, we do see that the filters still are filtering by actual objects. So for example, we're having to-do type is equal to to-do type ID, which is we see below that we're binding the ID. So it's not actually a string value there, it is actually an ID. So again, to get the exact to get the actual syntax, one should look at a few examples and learn how we do queries. So in summary, we have two methods of querying. One is using the entity model using Hibernate, or you can use a pass-through query.